Hello and welcome to another unit-by-unit review for the new Drukhari Codex. Today we continue our special character series with the third special character, Urien Rackarth, Master Homunculus of the Prophets of Flesh. Let's begin. Hello and welcome to another SkaredCast unit-by-unit series. I'm Skari, your grateful host, the fancy Archon, the original Archon, denizen of the deep, and we continue our unit-by-unit review. Today we're looking at Urien Rackarth. He is the Sculptor of Torments, the leader of the Prophets of Flesh, Master Homunculus in the Dark City. And as always, this video is in two parts. First, we're going to look at his lore and dive into who he is and where he fits in. And secondly, we'll talk about his unit options, a couple of tips and tricks to use him in-game so you, as a fellow Archon, or as someone who's learning how to fight against the Drukhari, can improve your game. Check the links down below. I have a lot of exclusive content for the Patreons. You can join the community as well, and a huge shout out to all you guys from all over the world that help support the content that I create. After all, let's jump right into it. Let's get started. And we begin. Urien Rackarth. Twisted beyond measure, the being known as Urien Rackarth has such mastery over the arts of the flesh that he has died and risen back to life time and time again. Urien's wizened body has long passed the ability to regain the glory of a recently fed Drukhari, for he is several thousand years old. Urien Rackarth has crossed the veil to death so many times that he savors death like a fine wine, reveling in the peaks of agony and the transcendent knowledge that comes with each new demise. In recent centuries, however, something seems to have been corrupted across his repeated renewals. His latest incarnations have each bone unintended vestiges of the one before, so that he is now a horrific sight. His compound spines and faces boast many sets of limbs and some not fully functional appendages. Rackarth welcomes all forms of injury, especially upon the battlefield, for it forces him to adapt his body to accommodate the wound. Like all homunculi, Urien has an undying enthusiasm for crafting symphonies of pain. He carries a variety of strange weapons to war, including a gauntlet that can inject his own highly mutagenic ichor into his foes, and a blade that can kill with the slightest scratch. The souls rip the flesh from the heads of their prey with needle-like fangs when he opens the casket of flensing, carrying them all back to Urien with the still conscious brains left writhing inside the bodies. Despite the panoply of cruel artifacts that Urien possesses, the true weapons of his demented fiends are repugnant creations that shamble forth, racks, grotesques, living sculptures that moan and stagger as rapacious herbivores writhe in the gore beneath. Rackarth often deigns to enter real space, accompanied by a cabal or witch cult. To set his creations loose upon the field of battle is not just to ensure the demise of his enemies, but to display his latest masterpieces to his fellow Drukhari, and ensure that he continues to be regarded as a true artist within the Dark City. To his faint amusement, competition is extremely fierce for the honor of the Master Homunculus. Few spectacles are as extreme as his carnival of pain. Archons from every corner of the Dark City come to view his grim spectacles, little knowing it was they who would become the subjects of Urien's latest masterpiece. Urien is awesome. I've used him in game. He loves death. He just wants to die. So when he does die in game, it's kind of like poetic. You know, you send him against the big nasty, and he just hopefully he dies. And if he doesn't, he kills some stuff on the way. You know, his kind of like philosophy and lore are represented quite decently in his rules. And there was a big switch from Index to Codex. First and foremost, his point cost, you know, decreased. So he's 5 power level, and he's 90 points. He's only 15 more points than a regular homunculus. And for what you actually get quite a lot. And now he's a specific Prophets of Flesh. He's the master homunculus of the Prophets of Flesh. So that's the obsession you'll be using if you want to use Urien Rackarth and get all the benefits. He's movement of 7, which is about average. He's a little slower than other characters. He has a weapon skill and ballistic skill of 2. Strength of 3. Now, big thing is he's toughness 5. Now, we'll get to it, but he becomes toughness 6 with his Master of Pain ability, which means he's a mini Carnifex or a Demon Prince walking around at toughness 6. Very, very strong. He's also got 5 wounds, which is about standard. He does have 4 attacks. His Leadership 8 and has a 6+ armor save. Pretty generic stuff for any sort of Drukhari character. The biggest outstanding one here, higher toughness. Why? He's a homunculus. They're known to be tougher. They rebuild their bodies. They feel no pain. He is a single model armed with the Casket of Flensing, homunculus tools, and an Ichor injector. And you can only include 1 Urien in your army. So what is the Casket of Flensing? It's a 12-inch assault 2d6 shooting weapon with a strength of 3 and -2 AP. And it can only be fired once per game. So you might do 2 shots, you might do 12 shots, hitting on 2s, strength 3. Very good against light infantry, strength 3, it's okay. With the -2 AP, can kill guardsmen, you know, just generic stuff. Can be, if you roll high enough on the amount of shots, can be dangerous to things like tactical squads and things like that as well. Homunculus tools are a melee weapon, strength of user, 1 damage, but they always wound on a 4+, unless it's a vehicle, in which case he only wounds on a 6+. So even he's strength of 3, but he's wounding most things on 4s anyway. There's no AP on his attacks, however. Now the Ichor injector is a melee weapon, strength of user, so it is strength 3, -1 AP and 1 damage. Now, you only make a single attack with the Ichor injector. You can reroll failed wound rolls with this weapon, and every time you roll a wound of a 6+, this target suffers D3 mortal wounds in addition to any other damage. So it's 1 attack, hit on 2s, probably wounding on 5s or 6s. If you roll a 6 to wound, D3 mortal wounds. It's a little bit underwhelming considering it's only 1 attack, so I wouldn't rely on it a lot. Now, where Urien comes most into play are his bonuses and benefits to helping units around him. So let's look at his abilities. He has no war gear options. You just take him as is. Doesn't even have a pistol, grenades, anything. He's just meant for close combat, the Casket of Flensing once per game, and that's about it. So, Power from Pain is a very generic Drukhari special rule. Every turn that the game goes on, the Drukhari gain a bonus. The first turn, they get a 6+, feel no pain. Second turn, they can reroll advance and charge distances. Third turn, +1 to hit. Fourth turn, they are immune to morale. And fifth turn, all enemy units within 6 inches, -1 leadership. So, I feel that Urien will benefit from the feel no pain. 6-up feel no pain is not bad. And from rerolling charges and advances. Other than that, he's already hitting on 2s, so the +1 to hit might not really come in handy. And immune to morale is relatively useless on a single model. And the -1 leadership to all units within 6 can come in handy, especially with some of the Coven stratagems that force people to take extra casualties when they fail morale and things like that. So, he has a rule or ability called Hemovores. Roll a d6 every time a unit within 3 inches, for every unit within 3 inches of Urien at the start of the fight phase. On a 6, they suffer a mortal wound. So if he's stuck in, there's 2 or 3 units, roll a d6 for each unit within 3. in the fight phase. On a 6, they gain a mortal wound. Can come in handy, you know, if you're trying to peg the last wound off something. Not something I would rely on. I wouldn't just run Urien and be like, come on and charge him with everything. You know, he will die, but it's on the off chance that you roll a 6, can come in handy. He has a rule called Sculptor of Torments. Add 1 to the strength and leadership of Prophets of Flesh units within 6 inches of Urien. So he gives all Prophets of Flesh units +1 strength. Now this is relatively wasted on Racks because they have poison weapons. They always wound on 4+, doesn't matter what strength they are. However, against Grotesques and things like Taloses, this can come really in handy. Why? Because they don't have poison weapons. They're strength 5 or strength 7 in the case of Taloses, which brings them up to like strength 8 and strength 6. This is quite useful when you have things like Taloses and Grotesques that have a lot of attacks in combat and you want to get them to do damage as much as possible. A Talos with a +1 strength, so you get the high strength of the Taloses, extra damage, and then the Grotesques become incredibly powerful with strength 6. He also has a clone field, which gives Urien a 4+ invulnerable save. This is okay, it's not bad. You know, it means that he just has a 4+ invulnerable save, and that's it. You know, kind of like all Prophets of Flesh, 4+ invulnerable save. He also has Contempt for Death. All damage suffered by Urien is halved. All damage suffered by Urien is halved. So if he takes, rounding up of course, so if he takes a weapon with 2 damage, he takes 1. 4 damage, he takes 2. 5 damage, he takes 3, because it's rounding up. 3 damage, he takes 2. So it means that those 5 wounds will go a long way against weapons that do multiple damage, like a melt gun. Rolling a 6 on a melt gun will only do, 5 or 6 will only do 3 damage. And then you're rolling Feel No Pain on a 6+, you might ignore the damage. So even though he's relatively survivable for a small Eldari character, and that is characteristic of all of the Coven units as well. And last but not least, he has the same rule as the other homunculus called Master of Pain. +1 toughness to all, specifically Prophets of Flesh in this case, units whilst they're within 6 inches of a model with this ability. So he will give Grotesque +1 toughness. He gives himself +1 toughness for the toughness 6. Other homunculus, they already have that anyway. Taloses, Grotesques, and Racks, and any Prophets of Flesh transport, like Raiders and Venoms. So you can have toughness 6 Venoms, toughness 6 Raiders. Pretty cool. If you have a Tantalus from Forge World, it's toughness 7. With Urien Rackarth, he'd become toughness 8. Or if you have Reapers, they become toughness 7. From Forge World as well. So Urien has, he's a bit of a toolkit character, but he's really about buffing the big critters around him. So if you see Urien on the battlefield, he's more than likely going to be sitting around Racks, more Grotesques and Talos, more than Racks. But he's going to be sitting around them, making them stronger and tougher, and better leadership as well. Keywords: Eldari, Drukhari, Prophets of Flesh, and character infantry homunculus Urien Rackarth. And that is what we have for Urien Rackarth. So let me know down below what you think of the Master Homunculus. Have you used him in-game? Because I have, and he is quite tough. You know, his toughness 6 especially really catches people off guard when they think they're going to run in and do some damage to a weak Drukhari character. So use his abilities to your advantage and maximize it with a large unit of 9 Grotesques, or a big unit of 3 Taloses, or even 2 units of Taloses. And he really just enhances them that much more in-game. If you have any suggestions or recommendations, put it down below. Also, what you have found that he dies very quickly to. Like most Drukhari units, we're quite vulnerable to things like Smite and things that do mortal wounds because they go straight through the invulnerable saves. So it's always good to keep in mind that you need something like a Helm of Spite or even an allied Farseer to get in and help with some psychic shenanigans. Other than that, guys, thanks for tuning in here at The Spire, The Denizen. I'm Skari, your grateful host. Check the links below if you'd like to find out more about all the stuff that we do here on SkaredCast. And I'm Skari, your grateful host, signing off until next time. Skari out.
It's an exclusive. We're playing the game.